Cello, I'm Kathy with a K, sometime radio broadcaster here in Honolulu with Hawaii POV, a talk story series, continuing with part 2 with Jason Genegabus. What is it about radio then that helped you continue to be missing out on sleep, on concerts? There'd be, club events, probably in your 20s at that time, just out of college, and the music scene is always jumping. There's always something. It's just a matter of like stepping outside of your door, just walking around because there's so much music and art.
It can be a little harder these days to uncover some of it now. Back when I was doing the entertainment thing, it was a lot of fun and it was kind of easy for me because it was what my day/night job already was. At the newspaper, once they figured out I could write and that I was young and that I was going out, they recruited me to do more nightlife and entertainment writing.
You were on the radio and you were working
For
for
a
the
few
Honolulu
years,
Star Bulletin.
For a few years, it did overlap. I got hired at the Star Bulletin in 2000. I started writing my entertainment column in 2001.
In the Mix.
In the Mix, and that stuck around for 15 years.
How did you get that? I mean, that's a really great features, fun thing where other people are like, you're going to have to cover the shooting that happened out whatever neighborhood,
I was very lucky to get the opportunity to work in the features department, which is not the hard news, it's the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And there were guys back then, Ben Wood, Dave Donnelly for the other side of the advertiser.
I'm getting chicken skin. I just remember reading their columns.
Guys like Wayne Harada, who would write in the style of what's called a 3-dot column, where it's a bunch of different items where you're dropping names and, talking about what's cool and what's trendy. And they had envisioned at the Star Bulletin back in the day that I would be the next wave of that. So it was everything that the current columnists, because they were kind of getting advanced in age, it was what they weren't doing was what I was expected to do. So to tie it in with your question about radio, it wasn't hard for me to do the crazy shifts because I was already up kind of nocturnally for the paper, right? And for me, it was just, I was single, I was young, I had the time and the energy. Working 7 days a week, either doing something for the paper or something on the air for the radio, and then I was also working as a part-time promotions assistant. So yeah, it wasn't fun being in the studio because I would have to be the one back then. Like, for example, the Friday night live broadcast. Pipeline Cafe, Foreplay Fridays, Rick Rock, what's happening? That would be the Friday night promo, right? They'd be on the air till 1 o'clock in the morning, and it would start at 10 or whatever. So because I was a promo assistant, we'd have to go down to the club, turn on the broadcast over there, hang out, rah, 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 get the mic. Me, because I was the one who was responsible for the broadcast, I'd have to take off, go back to the studio, turn off the broadcast, and then be on the air overnight after that. And then get up the next morning and do something for, go and do a promo at like Pro City gas station.
If we think it's skeletal staffing now in 2018, it's amazing that they had you doing that. There could have just been whoever's promoing, or hosting at the club could have flipped the switch.
No, because no, it's not the jock's job.
Oh.
That was the thing, right?
Right.
Like,
That's not what
jocks do. Jocks
talk about pay grades and such silliness.
It's the promo assistant's job or whatever. But for me, it was more, at the time, the company I worked for, we were the underdogs. We were the scrappier of the radio groups, and it was more of that team aspect where I liked the people I worked with, and we had a lot of fun. And if it meant go back to the studio and hang out with the one other overnight guy that was there, yeah, why not? Good times.
With radio, our deadline is the song's going to end, open your mic, say something before you hit the post, or when, the singing begins on a song, no dead air. And it's just 24/7. With the newspaper, editors working on making sure everything's cool before it goes to press.
It's just scheduling and being able to budget your time accordingly. And that's,
you never felt any kind of pressure to, like, with the requirements of In the Mix?
Part of why they wanted me to do it was because I was working in radio, because I was already going out, because I was already doing that already. So they knew they wanted me to do that. At the same time, it was what interested me. I wanted a full-time job with benefits. And like when I was growing up, I used to think it was kind of insulting that people would say that I was kind of like a social butterfly. But now when I got a little bit older, I realized it's not a bad thing. It actually helps me with what I do at the newspaper because I can kind of get into almost any crowd and at least break the ice and make people feel at ease enough to want to talk to me. Not everybody can do that, right? It's an acquired skill. And what I found was that once I started writing the column, once I started covering nightlife and people knew who I was, I mean, just like anything else, you build relationships, right? And so that I used to get asked that all the time. How do you figure out what you're going to write about, or where do you get your
And
tips
the order,
and
the
stuff like
priority of it. I went back and I looked at some of the columns. They're still available online. Look for In the Mix. Oh my God. Do you miss radio at all?
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, I'm a Leo. I like making people listen to me talk. Like that's the fun thing about radio is once that light goes on, they gotta listen to. I mean, they can change the station, but if they want to listen to you, but that was always the fun thing for me was again the nuts and bolts of radio, the being live, having the thrill of having 2 tracks coming up and you had 17.3 seconds to read your liner and make sure you hit the post and make it sound good, and then talk to somebody on the phone, record it. 2 minutes later, you're using that person's voice on the radio. The immediacy, it's just, for me, when it was live and when, like we did, I was helping out with a Saturday night mix show, the OG Saturday night street party on KQMQ back in the day. But the thrill of having live mixing with DJs on turntables outside, there's somebody inside partying, in the studio, people are calling up, and it, that excitement, that electricity, that was the fun part of doing radio. And then there was a few years of voice tracking.
Yeah. Each of us were raised up listening to radio. Different creative types turned that into something. Either they went in, they loved doing music or making music, but to actually be talking in between the songs, if you make it exciting and make it something that's, that people want to fall in love with, then they'll come back.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's Field of Dreams. Okay, sports. Was it baseball, football?
Baseball was the first sport, and then I needed stuff to do when I wasn't playing baseball, so I tried a little bit of everything. Played soccer, played football. By the time I got to high school, it was baseball, football, soccer.
Did you ever call games? Broadcasting?
Man, if you think radio is hard to get into in this town, being a sports broadcaster in this town is even harder. The closest I got was when Hawaii Winter Baseball was here. There was a time where they were playing their games at Les County Stadium, and I was lucky enough that one season I got to be the voice of Hawaii Winter Baseball at Les County Stadium. So the announcements when you're coming in, introduce the lineups, introduce the players when they were stepping up to the plate or whatever. So I got to do that. That's
cool.
Fun. Yeah.
Like so many media outlets, radio, TV, print, here at the radio station, we are encouraged to utilize the various tools at our disposal, like social, our website, blogging, and things like that. For your paper, you've incorporated, the website, your blog, it's the obvious thing having it, your column on the site, but you also have video. Was that something you were already doing and they're like, kind of like, can you just make that officially part of our paper?
The video goes back to the Star Bulletin days, so that's before 2010. When the merger happened in 2010 and we became the Honolulu Star Advertiser, the paper's always been, looking forward to the future and trying to think of how best to service our readers with the means of technology we had available. For me, it was more nobody else was doing it when I started learning about it. You know what I mean? The merger was in 2010, but Facebook was before that, Twitter was before, like all these things were before that. So it kind of goes back to the Star Bulletin days that nobody else was on Twitter. So I got on Twitter and was using it to talk about what I was doing at work or when I would be out at work. Facebook was the same thing. And then when it came to video, it was really just nobody else was doing it. And it's almost like a proof of concept, like how you were talking about earlier. I wanted to show my bosses that, hey, we can do this and it can work, and you don't have to leave it to the TV stations to do video. Once I started doing it and convinced them that management that it was worthwhile, then they got behind it, threw a little bit of money at equipment. When the merger happened, pooled the resources, brought the talent together. What it also did was bring some of the technology talent that the Honolulu Advertiser had down the street to the Honolulu Star Bulletin, put all that together. And once the merger happened, there was a renewed emphasis on social, video, online, and it was because of this influx of talent that came into the building. More than half of my job is processing web content. I'm a web producer where I take what's supposed to be what is in the print edition and putting it online. So what you see online is as close to possible as what shows up in the paper. And then I do my column, Barfly, which is a bar column, liquor column. If it gets you intoxicated, I get to write about it. That runs on a monthly basis in our Crave section in the Star Advertiser. And then I do a little bit of general features reporting as well. So for me personally, the blogging isn't as prevalent as it used to be. The video, we now have a whole team of web staff. And there's a couple of other people there that work on videos and are shooting videos, it's a big part of their job. So for me, it's pretty cool to see a lot of the things that I was tapping people on the shoulder 10 years ago, saying, hey, pay attention to this, or I would try it and try to show people that we can do this. This is something that we can make work. Or even with the website that I helped out with, HonoluluPulse.com. I did that from 2010 when the merger started till about 2016. A lot of it was to show that it's possible. And it's good to see that elsewhere at the paper, some of the techniques or things that we were doing are continuing to be applied.
It's amazing that there's not more cross-pollination with radio and with our online content and using the social apps. Creating, it's like when you go like YouTube Live or Periscope or anything like that, it's like I don't think that it would infringe at all on television, but as you were talking, like, has Honolulu Star Advertiser ever had a YouTube Live channel where you just, you kind of benchmark it throughout the day? It would complement to what you're doing.
That goes to our parent company, which is Oahu Publications. They own Midweek, the Star Advertiser, a couple of Neighbor Island newspapers. What they've started is this initiative called the Digital Broadcast Network, putting Yunji Denise and Ryan Calais Tsuji. They're on video screens on newspaper racks in convenience stores, gas stations. And they're giving headlines from the print edition. So they're presenting a very brief newscast, and they're packaging that and putting it on YouTube. So that's the newspaper's answer to what you're talking about.
What's your creative outlet?
Yeah, until a couple of years ago, I was helping coach baseball at my alma mater. I was helping coach kids play baseball.
What is your alma mater?
I'm an Iolani boy.
Oh, right on.
What I'm doing now, it's when you say what's a hobby or what do I get, it pays me, but it's still fun, is that these days I get to teach over at HCC. I'm helping out the Mele program.
Honolulu Community College.
It's a music entertainment learning experience. It's basically the music industry for local kids. There's two tacks. You can go an engineering route, learn how to work all the audio stuff, or you can go music business. And the class that I teach is Introduction to Public Relations in the Music Industry.
That is a good one. Did you develop that, or was that something that was already established in your new
It was already there, but when they brought me in, they said you have not free reign, but you have the flexibility to kind of tweak it to
create the curriculum, rather.
Yeah, so I changed the textbook that we use. And the way that I tweak it is that because I have all this newspaper background, I may not be a practicing public relations professional, but I'm on the receiving end of a lot of that PR stuff, right?
Oh, that's perfect, because you know exactly what you need on a one sheet.
Yes.
Don't send multi-sheets. Not just,
Well, if it's interesting and it's newsworthy and there's a reason for there to be more than one piece of paper, then by all means, absolutely.
but have other people read it too, because what you might find compelling me.
And if you send me 5 pages of crap and you lose me in the first 2 paragraphs, it just goes into the garbage or the delete button.
Or you can sign up. How long have you been?
I've been there now 5 years. It's offered in the spring, but it's part of the bigger program. So you got there's other things.
So you have
that
to
you've
sign
gotta-
up for that, and that's like an elective?
No, it's an actual 2-year
Accredited.
program. You can get into the melee program at HCC, take your prereqs or whatever, take all the classes. It's a 2-year associate's degree, and you can actually, there's a partnership with a school in Nashville that you can take it and go on and get a 4-year degree as well.
That's
Or go
amazing.
transfer over to Manoa and use that and go on to get a communications or a business or whatever you wanted to do.
Have you been able to go to the Nashville campus? Or
No, unfortunately not. Again, because I only teach one class, one
that'd be a nice
semester.
little exchange program, because Nashville's.
Hit the button.
Oh my God! That
Somebody
totally
hit the
that
button.
totally kicked off my phone. So there was
we
a
all gonna
flash
die?
flood.
Are we gonna
Okay.
die?
And I didn't even panic. I'm like, I guess I'm just going to walk down to the studio and just go live.